The Industrial Revolution, new philosophies. Now, throughout the Industrial Revolution, through the 1750s to 1900s, there were a lot of new ideas and philosophies coming out on how people should be treated and how business should be treated. Many of these philosophies did not get along. There were hardships and changes brought on by the Industrial Revolution that inspired a lot of people that had different ways of dealing with all the problems that it came on. Several had different ideas and they didn't get along. They totally were the opposite of each other, and they competed to say which one was right and which one was wrong. Now, liberalism is a strong belief in individual rights, liberty, equality, property, all of those rights that we talked about with John Locke and the natural rights. According to the liberals, the main purpose of government was to protect individual freedom. All right, they wanted Adam Smith's laissez-faire economics, and he wrote the book The Wealth of Nations, and you can see that right over here on the slide. And his idea was you just watch the business evolve. The government watches from above, but does not get involved. They have a no hands-on approach to business. You let the business do whatever it wants to, and the government basically just watches. Now, conservatives had the set of beliefs that the classes that had power previously need to keep it. The old kings, the nobles, the church leaders. With the new Industrial Revolution, they believed in Thomas Malthus, and he said that the poor would continue to suffer as long as the population kept increasing. He wrote a very controversial book that basically said if you want your life to be better, especially if you're poor, you need to stop having kids. This was a huge controversy back then because people did not talk about anything like what we'd call today birth control or stop having kids, because women had no rights. As a woman, you did not have a right to say to your husband, I don't want to have any more babies. You had no rights, so the idea of allowing you to make up the decision of whether or not you have kids raised a lot of eyebrows and had a lot of people talking. Now, social Darwinism also came out during this era, and it was basically a forethought coming through from Charles Darwin. You might have heard of him from your science classes, that he said that humans have evolved over millions of years. His theory of evolution caused a lot of problems between religious and science. Between religion and science. And we still have those problems today. People still are arguing over the theory of evolution versus the theory of Adam and Eve in the Bible. Well, with social Darwinism, they believed that members of each species had to compete to survive. We know this as survival of the fittest. Thus, natural forces select the most able members, producing an improved species. Now, we know this from science class, that if you are the weak buffalo, you're the one that's going to get eaten first. So only the strong survive. Well, philosophers during the Industrial Revolution turned this into a theory called social Darwinism, which basically said business people were successful because they were naturally more fit to succeed than others. So if you were a rich businessman, it's because you were better than everybody else, and you deserve to have that power, you deserve to have that money. And if you were a poor person or someone who didn't have a lot of money, you deserved it because you weren't able, you were not a hard worker, you were not fit to succeed, and this was nature's way of making sure that only the strong survive, only the strong have the power and the money. War, they also used the theory of social Darwinism for war. It allowed stronger nations to take out weaker ones because they said the weaker ones need to be controlled, they need to be taught how to act because they're not fit, that they can't take care of each other. Now, social Darwinism played a huge part in racial and racism and racial superiority. It was also contributed to the rise of imperialism, which is when a mama country or a big country takes out a little country. And you can see here is this is a very old picture taken out of an old history book, and it shows you where they say, different people and where they came from. So this was highly controversial back then, and it still is today, and obviously is not true. But this is what people really thought back then, and this is why racism became really embedded in our society, especially throughout the 1800s. Now, another idea that came out through this was socialism, which concentrated less on the interests and rights of individuals and more on the interests of society. So it's all about what's good for the group as a whole and not what, your individual rights or your individual needs. Industrial capitalism, which capitalism is all about the money. Okay, capitalism is the growth of money. The socialists claimed had created a gap between the rich and the poor. The rich were getting richer and the poor were getting poorer. Under socialism, people said the farms and businesses would belong to all the people and not just the individuals. Now, under utopian socialism, which really had a difficult time getting off, a utopian society is somewhere where everything is perfect, no one's ever sad, and everyone can get what they need without ever leaving the community. Alright, it's a self-sufficient community where all property and work would be shared. We actually had one right here in upstate New York, in Oneida, New York, that the Oneida, they were a socialist utopian society for many, many years. This also included that all wealth would be equal. The utopians, no one was richer than anyone else. Everyone shared their money, so no one would fight. Now, out of all this socialism, you get Marxist socialism, and you got to know this guy. All right, German philosopher Karl Marx promoted a more radical theory called scientific socialism. And in 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels explained their ideas in the book, The Communist Manifesto. You got to know these two guys, and you have to know the book, The Communist Manifesto. Now, with the Communist Manifesto, they believed that history was a class struggle between wealthy capitalists, the rich, versus the working class or the proletariat. So the rich versus the working man. In order to make profits, the capitalists or business owners take advantage of the working man. The proletariat would rise up and overthrow the capitalist system, creating their own society one day. Karl Marx basically believed that someday the working man is not going to take it anymore. He's going to rise up and say, I'm sick and tired of these working conditions. I'm sick and tired of making no money. I'm sick and tired of not being able to take care of my family, and I want a better system. He believed that the proletariat society would take control of the means of production, take control of the factories, take control of the machines, and establish a classless communist society in which all wealth and power is equally shared. Of course, this did not always happen. In the 1900s, the Soviet Union, an event would take over with the Marxist ideas, and this would lead to a communist dictatorship and a command economy. True Marxism is not the same as communism. We're going to talk more about that later, but understand that Marxism, everyone was treated equal, and nobody was rich, nobody was poor, everyone was supposed to have the same amount of money. This did not happen under communist dictatorship. The Soviet Union took Marxism and twisted it. Capitalism, guys, just to remind you, is when the business owner does whatever he has to do to keep his money. Capitalism is the people control the production and the prices. All right, we are a capitalist society here in America. We control the prices. If you want to pay, we'll say $100 for an American Girl doll at Christmas time, you're going to pay it. If all of a sudden that American Girl doll is no longer cool, nobody wants it, then what's going to happen to that price of the American Girl doll? It's going to drop, and you're going to find it on the clearance rack at Walmart because no one's going to want it anymore. When you want something and when it's rare, the price goes up. When you don't want something, it's no longer cool, and you can find it all over the place, the price drops and it gets cheaper. With a capitalist society, the people control the prices. They control how much they're willing to pay for something and where we can find it.